We've got our next guest, Joe Pompliano from readhuddleup.com. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man. Great story. I read it the other day. Matter of fact, our boss here, Wicked Awesome, Chad Johnson, actually tipped me off to this story. And I don't want to even steal any of your thunder because it's Masters Week. And you have a story about Augusta. No, it wasn't during the Masters, but it was during October of 1983 with Ronald Reagan as the president. And I'll let you take it from there. Set it all up and tell this wonderful tale. It's I don't know about wonderful, but it was a great story.
Yeah. So just for a little background, right? I talk about the business and money behind sports. And I think one of the things that people are fascinated with is Augusta National Golf Club, right? And I think the Masters being played there for over 80 years now has a lot to do with that. And it's brought a bunch of awesome and kind of historic stories to go with it and moments. But this was kind of bringing light to one that maybe wasn't so cool as you alluded to, but it was also really unknown, right? So the gist of it, right, is that Ronald Reagan, he was obviously a successful actor, and then he was the governor of California for a period of time, and he was elected as president. I think he was the 40th president, elected in 1981. So he had a tough couple of years to start. We entered into a recession. Unemployment was above 10%. We were losing a lot of jobs. He survived an assassination attempt. Just a really tough 2 to 3 years to start. And he went on vacation in 1983 to Augusta National Golf Club. He was invited there by a member, and he stayed in the Eisenhower cabin, which was a cabin built for President Eisenhower during his first term. It was built in conjunction, actually pretty cool, by Augusta National and the Secret Service. So it's kind of got all the bells and whistles that you would imagine a president would need. And so he's staying there. He's there for the weekend. One of the days, this guy named Charlie Hiles comes by, and he's a local resident. I think he was about 40 years old or something at the time. He's a local resident of Augusta. He drives by the course, like he has every other day. And he sees basically just a massive police presence out there, more than normal. And he asks the cop, he says, "Hey, what's going on in there?" The cop basically tells him, "Look, the president's in there golfing. We got a bunch of people here. That's how it goes." So he doesn't think much of it. He drives home, and he sits down, he watches TV, pours himself a drink. And Charlie Hiles, for the background of him, he was having a tougher year than anyone could have imagined. So within the last 12 months, he had lost his wife. He was in the middle of a divorce. He had lost his job just a month prior, basically, and his dad passed away. So he was kind of in a very unique and negative kind of minded situation. So he pours himself a drink, he's sitting down, and across the screen comes the news, breaking news, the U.S. just lost another couple thousand jobs. I think it was American steel workers were being cut and the jobs were being shipped overseas. So that's kind of what he did previously, and he just gets super frustrated. So he claims now that he didn't really, nothing much was going through his head, but he jumps in his truck, he drives down to Augusta National, and basically just doesn't stop when he gets there. He goes right through the gate that's closed, so he breaks down the gate. And now if you look at the gate going kind of down Magnolia Lane at Augusta, there's these bunch of, you'll see at any major sporting event, there's these massive kind of steel pillars, right, that'll stop cars or anything kind of coming through. They didn't have those at the time. So they do now. They put them in right after, actually. But he barrels through. He goes all the way down to the clubhouse. He jumps out of the car, has a pistol in his hand, and grabs basically what was the equivalent of, I want to say, a parking attendant of sorts, right? The guy was helping a member of the club put clubs in their car. So he grabs that guy, kind of puts the gun to his back, and is like, "Hey, follow me." They go inside. He goes in the pro shop, basically locks the door. There's 4 other people in there. So now he's got 5 hostages. Everyone's screaming. He's got a gun, obviously. And they're basically like, "What do you want?" And he's just like, "I want to talk to the president." Right? So he was so pissed off at the kind of the job loss and what was going on in America and the situation in his own personal life that he was basically just like, "I just really wanted to talk to the president about what was going on." And the funniest thing of the whole situation is that he voted for Ronald Reagan, right? So he was kind of a believer in what he was doing. I just think that he thought he was kind of down on his luck and was having a bad day. But more of it, he's in there with 5 hostages now. They go to the Secret Service obviously hears word of it, and they kind of grab President Reagan and they say, "Hey, look, there's this guy in the clubhouse who's screaming about you. He's got hostages and a gun. He wants to talk to you." So they're like, "Let's leave." And President Reagan, to his credit, really was like, "No, I'll just call him." Right? He's like, I'll call him and try to talk him down. So there's kind of varying accounts about what happened with the phone call, but most of them kind of agree that President Reagan made the call, and either the connection was spotty or kind of Charles inside, or Charlie didn't realize that it was the president. He thought it was a recording. But one way or the other, he got extremely frustrated that they couldn't kind of connect, and he smashed the phone. So right now there's no way for them to connect. And so whether that was smart or not, I'm not sure. But he smashes the phone, and they're like, okay, President Reagan, like, let's get out of here, right? So they basically get him in the kind of the armed motorcade, and there's these cool pictures that I put on Twitter of, it's all the Secret Service agents, and they're trying to look like they belong on a golf course with their jackets and their duck boots and kind of all that gear. But then they got Uzis and machine guns and all this stuff, so it's pretty funny. But they basically, they usher the president out. They bring him back to the cabin where he's safe and kind of protected. And they tell Charlie, like, hey, man, tough luck, he's not coming, right? So Charlie kind of releases the hostages one by one, and then eventually he just realizes, like 2 hours later, he's like, hey, look, this isn't going to happen, puts his gun down and surrenders. And so no hostages got hurt or anything, which I think is probably the positive of the story. But there was only one gunshot that was fired the entire time. And kind of funny enough, it was fired by Charlie himself, and he basically just fired it against the wall because the cops didn't even believe the gun worked, right? They kind of sensed that he wasn't really there to hurt anyone. It was more of just anger and frustration. But, you got to take the guy seriously when he has a gun and hostages. So that actual bullet hole was actually in the wall at the pro shop until recent renovations at Augusta. And I want to say, I didn't know this, but someone commented on it, that the bullet was saved after the renovations, and they kind of put it in this case of memorabilia at Augusta.
Wow,
so pretty cool. Yeah, exactly. But I think the interesting part of the whole thing was that most people obviously didn't know this story. It kind of got swept under the rug. And the reason why was because so that was October 23rd, I want to say. And later that night, literally like an hour after this happened, unfortunately, 240, I think, one American service members were killed by suicide bombers in Beirut, Lebanon.
Wow.
So literally, this was back, right, like everything was going to be on the news or print the next morning. There was no Twitter, no social media, that kind of thing. So he was off the news before he was even on, right? The distraction immediately turned to kind of what was going on overseas. And Reagan, there's some funny pictures of him. He's kind of in his robe in the Eisenhower cabin, and they're kind of briefing him on what happened in Lebanon. And one of the hostages that was a member of the Secret Service, he laughs about it now because by the time he even got to go home and have back to his hotel and have a drink kind of after the whole ordeal, they called him back and they were like, hey, look, we got to get the president back to Washington.
Jeez.
So Reagan didn't even sleep there that night. It was obviously an exhausting day for him.
Well,
but yes, most people kind of didn't hear about it because of the situation overseas.
man, Joe.
But Joe, the caveat to that story is, the gentleman that broke in, but he served 5 years in jail, but things worked out for him when he came out. I like that part of the story.
Yeah. I tried to at least bring a little positive to it at the end because he got, obviously, when you hear that story, it's kind of you may think he's a little crazy or a little wild, and to some degree, to do something like that, you might have to be.
Right.
But he did his time in prison. I think he was sentenced to 10 years, and he did 5 and was paroled. And basically, he quit drinking. He got back together with his wife. And he moral of the story is he was given a Bible in jail, he says. And he became a Christian, and he started teaching Sunday school after that. So he ended up passing away a few years ago, but his life turned around dramatically, and he lived a good, I want to say 30, 40 years after that. So things certainly got better for him.
That's a great story, man. Joe, that was wonderful. I had to have you on to tell our audience something like that. You don't hear stuff like that very often. How the heck did you even find out about that?
It's crazy. I mean, I do a lot of research, right? So I talk about the money and business behind really every sport. And with the Masters coming up, that's obviously a unique one. And I've kind of, last year in November, I guess, since it was only a few months ago, I did kind of like the 10 coolest things about the Masters, like 10 unknown things. And it involved the wine cellar in the basement and kind of the crow's nest and all those typical things.
Yeah.
And people really attached to this one. And I didn't realize it's a story that most people really haven't heard.
Joe,
he's
got over 173,000 followers on Twitter. He's a great follow. It's Huddle Up, and it's a sports business newsletter, and he just put some great stuff up on Twitter. I would tell you guys to follow him at Joe Pompliano.
Or there's his read, huddleup.com. It's a free email every day that'll give to you and stuff like that.
So I tried to go to the website. Is it huddleup.substack.com? Or
yeah,
is it just
so the easiest way to do it is just to go to readhuddleup.com. It's basically like a dummy website that just pushes you towards my Substack, which is the newsletter platform.
okay? I got
That's
you.
awesome, man. We got to have you on for more stuff. I'm going to keep reading it, Joe. The more fun stories you put out there, the more times we got to have you on here in Detroit. Where are you located?
I'm in New York City, guys.
Of course you are.
I'm happy to come on. I got a bunch of these, but yeah, I'm in New York City.
Of course you are.
You got it?
Pompliano.
Yeah.
I would say, do you have another random great story like this that you can share with us as well, or point us in the right direction to go read it?
I can run you through one real quick that's just pretty simple. It's pinned to the only reason why I'll do this one is pinned to the top of my Twitter, so people can find it easily if they want a deeper dive.
I saw this one.
But yeah, I don't know if maybe you guys know this one by now, but it's about Junior Bridgman. So the way I framed it is he's an NBA player that he never made more than $350,000 in a given year in salary in the NBA, and he's worth over $600 million now, right?
Wow.
So I think yeah, the easy thing is, right, people claim $350,000, that's like $1 million adjusted for inflation. That's easy, right? And I told the guy that said that in the comments, okay, if you can turn $1 million into 600, I'll find you $1 million.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
He played for the
we'll get
Bucks,
that
right?
done.
Didn't he play for the Bucks?
He played for the Bucks.
Yeah.
He played for the Bucks. So he was drafted by the Lakers actually, and they traded in. He was part of the Kareem trade, so he never even played for them, and he went to the Bucks. He was a good player, but he was a role player.
He was no Lou Alcindor, that's for sure.
How do you make his money?
He's a good player.
Investments?
So this is the cool part of the story. When he was playing, he was basically like, all right, I'm making really good money, but it's not going to be money where it's not today's money where you can live forever and not worry about a thing and go retire, live on a beach, whatever. He was doing well, but he thought he needed to do more. So one of the things he was always fascinated with when he was playing was the fast food industry. So literally, while he was playing in the NBA, he was working off seasons at a Wendy's drive-thru.
Wow.
So imagine pulling up to a drive-thru and kind of getting handed your burger and fries or whatever it is, and an NBA player that you're watching on TV hands it to you, right? So he during the course of his career, by the time he retired, he owned 3 of them, and then basically when he had more time and was investing and kind of trying to multiply his money more aggressively, he basically just franchised a bunch of them. He owned some Chili's and some other restaurants like that, and he got them up to, I want to say, like 350 restaurants in like 12 states.
Wow.
So he built a massive portfolio of restaurants.
Good for him.
And then he ended up selling them actually. And now he's one of Coca-Cola's largest distributors. So
awesome.
He's done quite well for himself. Yeah.
Hey Joe, man, thanks a million for coming on.
I know
Give him a
what-
follow.
I know what rabbit hole Maz will be down this weekend,
Me
bro.
too.
Him and I both, dude. This is awesome, and I think that these are the intricacies of the sort of the whys that we find. So thanks for being a part of the show,
Thanks, Joe.
bro.